What you need to kind of see in this thing is that we didn't study it for the full 2 years. We studied adverse events, and it's called onset latency. So if it happened outside of the onset latency, it couldn't possibly be considered from the vaccines. So your chest is moderately sore one day, more sore, more sore, more sore. You go to your doctor. He says take a couple of aspirins or whatever. Maybe it's just a little influx, acid influx. You don't go through the testing, but because it's already been reported, you find out that you have a damaged heart. They can't report that. So a large underreporting factor. Onset latency was a big thing, and it was a big thing inside of the what do they call it? The post-marketing experience for the Pfizer data that came out a couple of years ago. It was big in that as well.
You also have subclinical effects that will accumulate over time because somebody will say, well, it's only a little bit of scarring on the heart tissue that does not regenerate. Well, a little bit of scarring from one jab, and then what about a little bit more? And you may not notice it. It may not be at a point that is noticed to be reported, but the damage is still there. Therefore, again, the underreporting is much higher than what we even know.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things that McCullough said too, or very early on, was that there is no such thing as mild myocarditis. There is no such thing as mild heart inflammation. Any heart inflammation is dangerous. It needs to be taken very seriously. And there's anyone who would describe heart inflammation as mild or make it come off as like it's just it's a little inconvenience, they're not being honest with you.
Well, and then there's an even larger factor that goes into this, because if you looked at it, how well do people with dementia communicate? Can they tell you when something's really troubling them? And if you get away from the people that with dementia, when they started giving this to children, how many kids can communicate that they have a sore chest or some of the other symptoms of myocarditis from the ages of 6 months to, let's call it, 3 years old? Children aren't very good communicators, and especially with new parents aren't that good. Now, I'm not saying that parents are bad and they wouldn't recognize the symptoms, but even if the parent took a colicky child into the doctor would give them something for that, but not attribute it to the vaccines and may not attribute it to the actual condition that's going on. And that's what I find the most troubling, is you're now giving this stuff to people that can't communicate if they're having a bad reaction, while there's absolutely no benefit for them and only 100% risk.
That part was unforgivable for me. That I can't, I try to give people the benefit of the doubt and understand that, people behave poorly when they're fearful for their life, for their health or their family's health. But no, for the people who should have known better, the how actively the government and medical governing bodies pushed these vaccines on children, that makes me, I try not to get upset about this kind of stuff, but it makes me very upset.
Makes me very upset. Closing them out of parks, letting them go through 2 years of pandemic before you give them a vaccine where their risk was so small it couldn't even be calculated. And again, this came from Israel, and as related to Pfizer, and the study literally said no healthy person under the age of 50 has died from COVID. No healthy person under the age of 50. Inside of Canada, we could show that basically no healthy child, especially no healthy child under the age of 18, has died from COVID. There's absolutely zero reason that these vaccines should have been pushed into children. AstraZeneca was actually late in coming out. So while Canada considers Moderna and Pfizer as having come out on, I believe it was December 14th, 2020, only 8 people got the jab that day. So they weren't really out in full swing. But they were out and available in December. So call it January when they started rolling out the Pfizer and the Moderna. It wasn't until February, the end of February, that the AstraZeneca's got approved inside of Canada. By May, so they're approved in February. Let's call it mid-March before they're starting to make make it into people's muscles, right? By May, so March, April, May, 2.5 months later, 2 Canadian provinces had already pulled AstraZeneca. While not reporting any they just said, maybe we just don't want to use these anymore. By July 5th, Canada was tossing out half of the doses that remained. Right? And I think it was by June or July, we basically just stopped using the jabs. Now, what's kind of troubling about that is, I don't know if I have this on here, is the WHO recommendations on this were to give a booster may be considered every 4 to 6 months. Inside of Canada, they never started talking about booster jabs until September. Even if the WHO says it, there's zero clinical data that states that this has been tested in more than 2 jabs in 20,000 people.
The benefits of booster vaccination are recognized following increasing evidence of waning vaccine effectiveness against mild and asymptomatic SARS-CoV-2 infection over time. That sentence is ridiculous on so many levels. Like, where do you even begin with how stupid that sentence is?